Thank you.
Yeah, those might go pretty quick. Just wait. Hash them
Welcome
all
to the Wareham Conservation Commission meeting of Wednesday, March 4th, 2020. Mr. Baptiste, roll call, please.
Yes, members present, Alyssa Hurd.
Dave Hall.
Dave Hall. I know, sit next to each other. Myself, Ken Baptiste. Jim Smith. Rob Lassen. And Chair Sandy
Yeah, that one.
Slavin. And the agent, David Pichette.
Thank you. We have minutes to approve from May 5th, 2004.
Yeah.
And I didn't say the right year, 2004.
Motion to accept. I've already looked at it, and I'm the only one
Second.
present that was there.
And I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained? Thank you.
2004. Yeah.
Yeah, Dougie was still chairman.
Yeah, Doug was still chair.
Wareham wasn't even a gleaming.
Dragged this one out of the archives. This is only, 16 years ago? Yeah.
Bad. We're right on time.
We have a hearing for Edward and Susan Cabral. They have requested for continued until 3/18.
318, wow.
So move.
I have a motion.
Second.
Second. Anybody here for this hearing? Okay, it's continued until 3/18.
One down.
The next continued hearing is Barry Cosgrove. Anybody here for that? Please come forward.
The Costco.
Good evening. My name is Rich Riom, Prime Engineering. And we showed this a few weeks back. It's an existing, in brown here is existing dwelling, an existing deck, existing stairs, existing bulkhead. The blue is Blackmore Pond.
Okay, Rich, I'm going to hold you for a minute. I'd like to have Mr. Bichette speak to it, then you can tell us what has changed, because we have a new plan, correct?
Yes.
Yes. So let Dave talk to the project, and then,
I'll move there. You guys.
Okay, the project site is at 49 Blackmore Pond Circle, and the project involves the construction of an addition, a garage, and this is in the buffer zone to Blackmore Pond. A 28 by 40 foot addition is proposed, and an 18 by 24 foot garage is also proposed. Originally, there was a deck expansion proposed, and they have since removed that from the plan. The revised plan also does show dry well structures to handle roof runoff from the proposed additions. There was a question of whether or not these were outside the 30-foot no activity zone, meaning the new garage and addition. And there is a bit of a question in terms of how the edge of the pond was determined. So these structures are not quite 30 feet from the retaining wall there. And so I discussed with the engineer how the edge of the pond was determined, and it's just the location of the water the day they were there that they represented. And it is sort of a tricky area to determine how you're going to consider what's the edge of the pond. So the other issue was we didn't have a DEP number, and we also, there was a question of whether or not this had to go before the zoning board, and it turns out that it does. And the applicant has submitted an application to the zoning board, so that part of it has been squared away. So they have made some changes to the plan, and at this point, the only question is for the commission to determine whether or not they agree with the location of the pond edge or not, as to meeting the 30-foot setback.
okay. Rich, your turn.
Again, the additions to the plan were the infiltrators that are picking up the roof runoff. We added silt control, and we specifically said that the existing ground cover is not to be disturbed between the addition and the pond. Dave is right that we are dimensioning to the edge of the water as our survey crew located it on January 23rd of this year. So it is possible that in some years, the water is closer to the bulkhead. Obviously, in the summertime, it's much further away. We're held to the 40-foot setback from the street. We're in front of the zoning board with a special permit to allow us to go no closer than the existing dwelling. Existing dwelling is 40 feet from the street, and we're keeping the additions 40 feet from the street. So we can't pull it anywhere further away from the pond than as we have it shown. So it really is the question of the commission of whether they consider a January 23rd pond level essentially representative of the limit of the pond or not.
Okay, anything else? Questions on the board? I'll start down this end.
Is there any history of how the pond fluctuates? Is it a dry year, is this a wet year?
It does fluctuate quite a bit over the course of the year because water's withdrawn for cranberry operations. Wintertime, you get heavier rain and snow and it floods up and water's up against the bulkhead. So it does vary. What would be considered the average? I'm not sure. I don't know. Kenny, didn't you live on that pond or near it for a while? I mean,
Yeah.
what's your take in terms of, is the typical average level of it kind of where they represent, or is it closer to the wall, or what?
No, it actually, where they are isn't really that bad. It's about average because there's usually a little bit of beachfront there.
Okay.
And there is a
And-
2-foot flux. It's
Yeah,
the closest point
and
is
that pond
32.
could go anywhere from 6 to 10 feet. Fluctuation easy, you know. With flooding the bogs. Wintertime, you get a buildup, but you also flood the bogs in the winter, so that drops it, you know. That's a hard one.
Yeah, well, if that's the case and the commission's comfortable with the location as a good representative of it, then I'm fine. I just wanted that point to be known and for the commission to consider it.
Okay, thank you.
I have nothing.
Other questions? No. Anybody in the audience would like to speak for or against this project? I'm seeing none.
Motion to close?
I have a motion to close the
Second.
hearing. I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, the hearing is closed.
Motion to grant?
I have a motion to grant. Any there's no stipulations with this? No, just normal?
Normal stipulations.
Normal stipulations.
I have a motion.
Excuse me.
Second.
Cindy, we also had that they weren't, the stipulations which he mentioned, but maybe should be put in, that they won't change what the yard is in front of the house now.
The ground
Oh,
cover.
the no
Okay.
activity
Right.
beyond the thing, well,
Right, we're not proposing, we had
Okay.
grading before, we've taken the
Right,
grading
so I
away.
think
So,
that-
yeah, please add that to the order of conditions, that there will be no change in the ground cover of the lawn.
yep, no change in the ground cover of the lawn, that's existing there now.
Okay, I have that. I have that motion.
Second.
I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. Thank you. Please see Dave before you start the work. I have another hearing. Next is Buzzards Bay Coalition. Thank you. We'll just do a little paperwork here. For those that don't remember, this has been around since July or June. And here's, there it is. Okay. Formally, please identify yourself for the record.
Brian Grady, GAF Engineering.
Thank you. You ready? Mr. Bichette will read to the project.
Thank you.
Do we have the new plans?
Yes, let me hand out the plans.
There
That would
has
be a
been
good
a
idea.
change in the scope of the project and the location of the float, so we need to, we'll share.
Okay, the property is out in front of the Buzzards Bay Coalition property that was the former Deacon's property. The project originally involved the installation of 4 floats in a fixed position out in the water in front of the Buzzards Bay Coalition conservation property, in land under the ocean, and in land containing shellfish. And the site was also within the estimated habitat of rare and endangered species. The project has since been modified to propose 3 floats instead of 4, and the floats would be fixed to a single line to a mooring to allow them to swing with the tide and wind versus being in a fixed position. The floats would be 16 by 48 feet in size, so the 3 of them equate to just over 2,300 square feet. The floats would be used to store sailboats for a sailing program that they will implement. The floats are proposed to be located within an established eelgrass bed. There would be approximately 4.3 feet of water at low tide in the proposed location of the floats. Part of the application also proposed to include a 3-year study on the surrounding eelgrass bed to determine if the placement of the floats has any impact on the eelgrass bed, and this would be done by a college intern. Mass Division of Marine Fisheries has commented on the revised plan, and they prefer the revised plan versus the original. They recommend that the applicant consult with them on the proposed eelgrass survey methodology, and that results from the survey be reported to them on an annual basis. Mass Natural Heritage had no negative comments. We do have a DEP file number for this. So if the commission wishes to approve the project, then I would recommend conditions requiring that the floats be stored in an upland area out of the coastal flood zone in the off-season, that they be removed at an appropriate facility such as a marina or the town pier or a boat ramp, that the floats be made out of non-CCA treated material, and that the eelgrass study results be reported to the Mass Division of Marine Fisheries and to the Commission on an annual basis. And also that if it becomes apparent that the eelgrass bed is being damaged by the presence of the floats prior to the end of the 3-year term, that the floats be required to be relocated outside of the eelgrass bed or removed. So in other words, if there's obvious damage, you don't want to leave them there for 3 years to damage the area versus having them be relocated. So those would be my recommendations on the project.
Thank you. Brian, anything to add?
Nothing to add at this time.
Any questions to the board? In our last packet, there was a notice from our town council that he felt that the eelgrass bylaw is not applicable here, and that's just for the eelgrass, and there was no other comments from the attorney regarding the rest of our bylaws for this particular project on the water. So if we had any questions on what you saw in the last meeting from Mr. Bowen. But then now we can ask questions about what we have in front of us.
Do we know why it's not applicable?
Because this is not a fixed pier or a dock. It's a floating, this is no different than having a boat on a mooring.
Okay.
That's why the eelgrass was no longer applicable to the conservation wetland bylaw. Is that my understanding?
That was his
Yeah, that was his
assessment.
take on it.
Yes.
So, but is there any question on what you see in front of you?
May I ask how many boats are going to be on these?
18?
6 on
There's
each.
6 on each float.
So you can see 6 times 3 is 18 in the pit, yeah. Yes,
I think it's a pretty cool concept if it works.
yes. And so is there anybody in the audience who would like to speak to or for this project? We do need to put conditions on the order of conditions that there will be no launching or removal of the docks over any beach or uplands or anything like that. Everything will come in and out of an appropriate launching point. Nothing will be stored on the beach. The 3-year study for impact on eelgrass, every year there'll be reports made to several organizations, including conservation, regarding that, and that the material would be not CCA treated wood. Is that what I'm hearing? I know you would like to, I know you had probably something else in mind.
Not at this time.
No, so, did I already ask, anybody here wants to speak for or against this project? I'm seeing none. Folks, what do you want to do with the hearing?
Motion to close, I guess.
Have a motion to close the hearing? I have a second, all in favor?
Right?
Aye.
Motion to grant, with the stipulations of non-CCA material to be used to build them, and they not be stored in upland, or be stored in an upland area, and that they be launched at a certain point, or determined point. And the eelgrass study be filed with us every year.
Right. And the last one was relative to if there's obvious damage to the eelgrass bed that,
They'll be removed.
Immediately,
yes, or,
Okay,
as soon as the report is. That's the motion?
that's the motion.
second.
I have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained? That second plan was so much better than the first.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, it's, is there anybody here for the Robert public hearing? I would like to take something out of order, if it's all right with the board. Tom Melanson, are they here? Would you like to come forward? We're going to take you out of order to talk about your enforcement order. Is that all right? Please come forward and identify yourself.
I'm Tom Melanson, it's the Village Motel.
Okay, come on and have a seat so you can talk into the microphone.
I'm Thomas Melanson, it's the Village Motel, I'm the owner. And there's a question about putting hay bales on the perimeter of the property to stop erosion into the, is supposedly going into a small stream that passes
Okay.
by.
Tom, I'm going to interrupt you for a minute. Mr. Fischette will talk to the project, and then you may respond to him. Thank you.
So this site is at 2739 Cranberry Highway, and this is the Village Motel, it's known as. It's kind of across from Highway Concrete. There's a stream that runs along the west side of the building. And there was a lot of material and storage that was piled up against the top of the bank of the stream, and there was also vegetation that was removed in the area, kind of right up again to the top of the bank. So an enforcement order was issued to ask the property owner to clean up the materials that were stored within that area that they should not have been, which is basically, again, right up to the top of the bank, and also to allow the disturbed area to be revegetated. And what I stated to the owner was that there had to be some hay bales put in at this point because it's all basically bare dirt and the pitch goes downhill right to the brook. So in my opinion, that's needed at this point in the year since you really can't do much with vegetation right at the moment. So that's what I am stating needs to be required, and I'll let Mr. Melanson respond.
Okay.
Okay, as far as the hay bales, I don't think it's cosmetically reasonable since there's smell, there's mildew that is created by hay bales, the rodents factor, and visually seeing hay bales when there was a nice stream there. I would think possibly a smaller barrier, like maybe a 2x10 plank stood up at the edge, or dividing the hay bales maybe in a quarter so they're not so huge and bulky, and hopefully they won't smell so much and they won't create a rodent problem and the mildew factor.
Is there any idea when all the grass was removed, where that land became barren?
This gentleman might know that answer better.
There wasn't grass, in there was
It was weeds and.
bamboo, there bamboo, tall, but they was dry, they were all dry in there.
Right.
Because they dry in the wintertime, they dry right up.
So the vegetation that was there has been removed,
Yeah,
which
but
is
it-
why we now have bare soil.
But that was removed only like from 10 feet only was removed, 2x10, that's why it was removed out of there. But it will grow right back in the springtime, will grow right back. It's not a doubt about it.
So, any questions on the board? The idea is that the idea for the hail bales, we're trying to reduce the amount of runoff going into that nice little brook. And it is slightly sloped toward the water, so any heavy rains will wash the soil into that particular brook. And it's not the whole length of it, it's only where the ground has been cleared, correct? So it's,
Right. And again, it's a temporary measure. It's not meant to be permanent. You don't typically get rodent problems because you have hay bales there. If you have rodent problems, that's not necessarily because you have hay bales there. It's for other reasons.
the idea is that somewhere down the line, the hay bales are going to be replaced with some type of planting that prevents the erosion, correct?
Right. The vegetation needs to be reestablished so that,
Yeah.
so
So
it's
this
only
is-
going to be a temporary thing. It's not meant to be permanent. So in the springtime, when you can get that reestablished with vegetation of some sort, then the hay bales would be removed.
Okay?
Can you divide the hay bales so they're not so bulky and so not so great looking at when you're visiting the motel?
Would the round wrapped ones be appropriate here?
The tubes?
They sit, yeah, the tubes, they
Wattles?
sit lower.
They do, but they're less effective, you know?
Yeah, I just don't know if they are effective enough for this
So you put a hail
temporary-
bale in and you put a stake in the middle of the hay bale to keep it stable.
Same
Yeah.
with the tube. You
Yeah.
Yeah, but the water will go through the hay bale, and it'll stop the sediment, which, if you put a plank there, that's gonna be a cofferdam right there. It's gonna stop everything, water and everything. It's gonna build up, and it's gonna go over it. So that's not gonna be effective. That's why they put the hay bales. The hay bales will break down.
And if you cut the hay bale in half, it will no longer have the stability of a formed rectangle, and it will become loosened and fall apart, and that stuff will fall into the stream. So the recommendation of the commission is that hay bales be placed
Sandy,
until you get your vegetation back.
well, maybe they can even start planting vegetation earlier this year than one would think.
Well,
Well, maybe, yeah, if the
Yeah,
weather
you know.
holds, but,
I
you
mean,
know.
and the,
but
What
planting,
about jute netting?
Some ride probably work out in a couple of weeks.
yeah.
You could do some sort of an erosion blanket, but it would have to cover the whole thing. That's the issue, you know, so
Yeah, but
that's
it
an
won't-
option.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a little more costly, but
They
you
they
prefer
wanna
that,
go
then-
aesthetically. I mean, you
Yeah.
know, you ain't gonna see that.
Well,
It's just
Yeah,
the
but
jute
then
The
it's
netting.
not-
hotel is losing 50,000 a year, so, and cost is a factor. I'm deciding whether to keep the hotel going or sell it or whatever. But if it doesn't change, I'm not gonna be the owner next year. Well, this year.
So cost-wise, the hay bale is the most reasonable,
It's cheaper, yeah.
cheaper than any other alternatives. And it's only going to, you're only going to have them there until come springtime and the vegetation grows back and you don't have the erosion issue.
But then you have to get rid of the hay
Then you have to
bales.
get rid of the hay bales, yes.
Well, you can take them and pile them up in a spot and mulch it. I mean, you've got other stuff piled up all over the place there anyway. It's not like you don't have other stuff there that needs to be removed. There's junk cars and stuff like that
Well,
back there, and it's,
Trying to make an attempt. I mean, there's somebody there, but he's using the garage. He's a renter. He's about 1 out of the 4 people that keep in the motel, at least paying some of the costs.
yeah, well, like I said, our interest is in correcting the violation. The other issues as far as whether or not you're gonna be the owner there or not is not some concern of ours. That's your issue. So at this point, we're just wanting to prevent further erosion into the stream, clean up the rest of the material that needs to get cleaned up, and get things back on track, so.
How about wire?
No, hay bale.
You're only talking about
Wire?
5 of them, 6 tops?
No,
Well,
more than that, way
you're
more than that.
you're probably talking closer to, what did we estimate?
Oh, I thought,
Around 75 feet.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I thought I heard about 10 feet.
So 75 feet, 3 feet per bale,
Yeah.
25 bales.
yeah,
Oh, yeah.
so, yeah, but that's what it is. I mean, I don't know what to say other than that's what's necessary.
For just 2 months, I can't see why it's.
Because it's
so
eroding into
needed.
the stream, that's why. Why was the vegetation cleared out of there? It shouldn't have been done.
Dry stuff to get out, because there goes the rodent problem again. And the smell, you wanna clear out dry. If you have a property, are you gonna let dry things, dry leaves?
You have dry things every fall anyway, seasonally.
Right, but you clean them up occasionally.
You don't strip the land of all the, you don't strip the land of all the plants.
All the live vegetation remains.
Well, okay. Boards, is there a fine on this?
That's up to the board.
I would say at this point, no.
Okay. I would need approval for supporting, what is it called? There is a name for supporting the enforcement order?
Ratifying.
Ratifying the enforcement order?
Yeah, I'll motion to ratify it.
I have,
Is there a date on this?
Yeah.
Does this need to be done?
Well, again, that's something the commission should decide tonight. You give them 2 weeks to get this done, or a week, whatever it takes. The gentleman mentioned he could get this done in a couple days, if it's,
Once we get the bail, it can be done in a couple of days.
yeah,
Why don't we revisit, as long as it's done by the next meeting?
okay?
Why don't we revisit, and if it's done by the next meeting, we will forego the fine and then
So,
ratify the,
you want to ratify it then, as opposed to?
Ratify it
like to see
tonight.
it done.
Ratify it tonight.
and then continue it.
And then continue it,
Wasn't sure how that worked.
Yeah,
and to see if it has been done within the next 2 weeks before our next meeting. If not, we'll levy a $300 fine. Okay, so,
That sounds reasonable.
so I have a motion to ratify. Folks, I need a second.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
So we'll ratify, we'll sign it tonight. In 2 weeks, Mr. Pichette will visit the property. If it has not been hay baled as required, there'll be a $300 fine issued. All right?
That works.
Okay, thank you.
yeah, all set.
All set.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a public hearing?
We do. We have a notice of a public hearing pursuant to the provisions of the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Wareham Wetland Protected Bylaw, Division 6. Public hearing will be held in room 320, Wareham Multi-Service Center, 48 Marion Road, Wareham, Mass., Wednesday, March 4th, 2020, at 7:15 p.m. on the request for determination of applicability for Jacqueline and Philip Roberts, care of Lockwood Architects, P.O. Box 95, Onset, Mass. 02558, to construct an addition located on Assessors Map 2, Lot 190, 14 Evergreen Street, Wareham, Mass.
Thank you.
Good evening, Bill Lockwood for the petitioners.
Thank you, Bill. And you've got the green cards?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Bichette will read to the project.
The project site is at 14 Evergreen Street in Onset, and the project involves the construction of additions and a patio within a coastal flood zone. A 9 by 19-foot patio, a 6 by 16-foot addition, and a 3 by 3-foot addition are proposed within flood zone AE elevation 14. The work is not in the buffer zone to any other resource areas. There's no grade changes or fill proposed, so I'd recommend the approval of the project with the negative determination number 2.
Thank you. Bill, anything to add?
No, not at this time.
Questions on the board?
Done.
No.
Anybody in the audience would like to speak for or against this project? I'm seeing none.
Move to
Motion.
close.
I have a
Second.
motion to close. I have a second. Thank you very much. All in favor?
Aye.
I opposed, abstain. Hearing is closed.
Move to grant with a negative determination and standard conditions.
I have a motion to grant -2.
Second.
I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, done. Thank you, Bill. Before you start anything, see Dave for the paperwork.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you all.
Okey dokey, back to continued hearings. We have a hearing for Kenneth Deleuze.
It's a request to
They have a-
continue that
Yeah,
hearing.
there's a request to continue that until 3/18. Anybody here for that project?
So move.
I have a motion. I have a second to continue it in 3/18. All in favor? Opposed, abstained, it is continued. Next one. Oh. The one I can never remember how to pronounce. Parento. I apologize. This one is for 15 over Jordan Road. We had a whole bunch of DEP. Finally came in for every one of them, I think. This 15 over Jordan,
This is the
this is the-
second pier.
this is the second pier in which Mr. Buckminster was asked to come talk to us to why he had objections to it. That didn't happen, so we're here to talk about the second pier. Please identify yourself for the record.
Brian Grady with GAF Engineering.
Thank you. Anything new to add?
Well, I'll just go over it briefly. Again, the site's 15 over Jordan Road, and the project involves the construction of a pier, ramp, and float into Shell Point Bay. It's a 200-foot pier, ramp, and float that is proposed. So this was a project that the harbor master submitted comments on, and he is opposed to the approval of this pier for reasons stated regarding significant shellfish habitat and the use of the area by commercial and recreational shell fishermen. I did contact Mr. Buckminster about this and asked if he would come to the meeting to talk about it further, or if he had any further comment, or if he, felt that his comments were final. And he stated to me that he is opposed to it and does not have any changes to his comments and wants that to be his final commentary. So, again, based on that, I do have to recommend that the commission not approve the project, because in our town bylaw, there is a section that states that Piers shall not be allowed that are located in significant shellfish habitat as determined by the Mass Division of Marine Fisheries or the Wareham Shellfish Constable. So that's where things stand on this one. There was also some comment about this being potentially a pier to be used by multiple residences, which again wasn't really pointed out at the beginning of this project. And that presents other problems as well, which I don't believe this area is suited for a pier to be used by multiple residences, even if right now they're only saying they're going to use it for kayaks, because that's something that you can't really control incredibly well. And if people have rights to it, then the commission has to look at this in terms of it potentially having multiple actual boats on it. So that's sort of a side note, but anyway, I'm making my recommendation based on the harbor master's comments.
Thank you. Brian, anything to add?
Yes, we were hoping to get some additional clarification from Mr. Buckminster's
So were we.
comments, but we don't. So we'll address what we can. You were submitted an original plan to construct a pier at this location. Comments were received from DMF and the harbor master, Mr. Buckminster. We submitted revised plans which address the DMF comments, which involved raising the height of the structure to get it above the salt marsh, calling for float stops to keep it 30 inches above the float, 30 inches above the bottom for the shellfish habitat, which we've shown both raised the structure, and we are calling for float stops to keep it 30 inches above the substrate. We've also done a number of things from the beginning to minimize any impact to the area. From the beginning, the spacing on the piles has been 36 feet. Typically, the spacing is significantly less than that. We're calling for aluminum structure to be constructed, so that allows more light penetration as well to get to the salt marsh and to the substrate. NHESP has made a determination, because we are in habitat, they've made a determination that there'll be no take. So that's been remedied. So we think some of the revisions we've made to, in response to DMF comments, also address the harbor master comments. The way I read his comments, he talks about obstruction to the shell fishery. To me, that's kind of a physical obstruction. You know, can someone get there in their skiff or their boat and get to that patch of ground to get shellfish from? Well, yes, they can. We're proposing, I believe, 13 piles that are in potential shellfish habitat. So that's 13 square feet of habitat that will be lost. But you can still get to the shellfish right next to it and all around it. His concern, again, how I read it without clarification, was that maybe people cannot traverse under the pier to get from one side to the other. They would have maybe had to go around. They could still access that. But with raising of the structure per DMF comments, we have roughly 5 feet of clearance from mean high water to the bottom of the structure. So people can traverse under that structure to get to the shellfish habitat that they want. A shellfish report was prepared and submitted to you. They did find moderate shellfish at the location, I think was the word he used. I think, you know, 1 clam or quahog per 3 square feet. So this project could be conditioned, as other projects have been conditioned, to prior to construction, that any shellfish along that transect where the pier will go can be relocated and moved away from underneath the pier. Other conditions have been put on projects. Donations have been made to shellfish propagation programs through the harbor master's office. Mr. Buckminster's comment letter also states that, you know, this structure is significant in that it's 196 feet. Well, yeah, that's the overall length, but the length within the shellfish habitat is about 130 linear feet out to the end of the float. So that's about a third less than what he states in his letter. So given the revised plans, what we believe we've done to minimize the impact by increasing the spacing between the piles to 36 feet, calling for aluminum piers to increase light penetration. We believe that the shellfish habitat is still accessible for commercial and recreational fishermen. And we believe the project can be conditioned, as other projects have been in the past, such things as jet driving the piles be prohibited, donation for the shellfish propagation program, prior to construction, coordinate with the harbor master for moving any shellfish that might be in that transect where the pier is going to be reconstructed. A further option for further revision is, right now the pier is proposed in the line of where it has been previously permitted and previously existed. It could be relocated more perpendicular to the shore, which would slightly decrease the coverage of the salt marsh that's there, as far as, turning it rather than an oblique angle, a perpendicular to the shore. So that would help with a little bit of the going over the salt marsh, even though we do have the proper height and the light penetration. The horizontal crossing of the salt marsh would be reduced a little bit. And that would get us out with the 200-foot limitation. Making it perpendicular would increase the length out into the water and get a couple inches of water depth, because the pier would end up being a slightly longer because it's not at an angle to the shore. It's perpendicular to the shore. So it would get a couple more inches in depth of water. So there's a further revision could be made with some final tweaks to get a little bit more benefit out of it. But so we think with all the revisions that have been made, with the initial design and some conditions that could be placed on the project, we don't think this will have an adverse impact to the shell fishery.
Do you think Mr. Buckminster will have an issue if it comes back with a new design with it being a 90-degree angle to the shore?
I don't know what his opinion would be.
Yeah,
Oh.
I'm just, do you think by relocating it slightly differently, we would be getting out of the shellfish area that Gary is making his objection to on?
No, you're going to be in the same general area. You might cross a shorter length of marsh, but you're going to be in the same general area.
Over that same sandy area that's seen at low tide.
Right, and, just to clarify, in speaking with him, Mr. Buckminster is aware of the types of conditions that can be put on a project potentially if he feels that it's something he's agreeable to permit. So if he wanted to say he was okay with it with these conditions, that's what he would have written in his report. So anyway, I just wanted to leave the commission with that. He doesn't often write a comment that he's opposed to a pier unless he feels, that the area is significant. We don't typically see too many letters from him saying he's opposed to the structure.
I have a question, and that is, I know it's easy to sort of say it's fine that people can go from this side, say it's an individual or say it's a business, a commercial quahog or whatever. And so they're going to be going from one side of the dock, and then they come out around and say hello to the people who are on the Parentos understand that if they have shell fishing at the ends of their docks, they can have people digging quahogs, giving clams, whatever, right where they're putting their kayaks when they're coming in and out, and so on and so forth. I mean, and are they going to welcome the public to this public area? And I don't, I'm sort of a little bit wondering how this is all going to work. And I certainly understand the Parento's desire to have this for their family, but are they also aware that, you know, you have a quahog digger who's going to come by, and if they're digging there, then they're going to have to go to the other side and go around it's not a public water, if you will. You know, people can, it is public.
It
yeah,
is public,
It is
yes.
public, and so people can go around it, but they can dig on your property. It's not your property, is my point.
Yeah, they can shellfish all around their
And-
structure, correct.
And I think, I mean, they can go all around it, and, you know, the Parentos can't really say, although the temptation would be to say it, excuse me, don't come here, go over there. But that's not what you're going to be able
Yeah,
to say.
outside of our scope.
It is, but it sort of goes along with the letter as far as the,
Yeah, that wouldn't be
Harbor
Mr. Parento's intent, is to tell someone you can't shellfish near my pier. No, it's
no,
it's
not
all,
his intent, I understand that.
yeah, it's all accessible.
Man,
Well, they do that.
Sorry, can you, if you want to, I will ask for comments from the
all right, sorry.
floor shortly. Anything else from the board? No? Anything? Now I'll ask, anybody would like to comment on this project, come forward and identify yourself.
Yes, Mr. Parento. I was only answering, she was looking right at me to give an answer to it, so I apologize for that. They go around the other 6 docks that are there too, in and around the area. This would be no different than anybody else having a dock in that area. I don't understand it, but then again, there isn't a whole lot I'm gonna do about it. However, to answer your question, they go around 6 docks that are on that water now. I've seen 1 boat there in 9 years. If 14 square feet or this dock in the water inhibits the 1 commercial guy, I go out there and shellfish.
And do your neighbors?
I can walk under the dock, and so don't the neighbors. And they walk all around the dock. The guy next to me has a dock. I go under his dock and I shellfish. It's not an hindrance that I can see, but again, that's my opinion, so that's all.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Will the family have access to that other pier, though? Is that, you have 2 piers, right, with in this compound that
Well,
there?
I mean, today, yes.
Yeah.
Can we,
Yeah, sorry. Today, yes. But the reason for putting the second pier is, A, it was there. So I'm gonna rebuild, not like I'm going new. Second one is, it's a separate piece of property. It's mine. So if my son decides to move at some point in his life, I won't have a dock. And it's not the idea for this. It was, okay, my son's gonna have a house, I'll have one, there was 2 docks there, and I'll rebuild the docks that are there. And there's a third piece of property in front that eventually I plan on subdividing and building a house for my daughter. But there was no dock there. So I'm not gonna go to put a third, and if something happens, I'll let her use mine or my son's or something of that nature. And the comment, that was made about not, using this for other people, that's just a gift or trying to be nice. They don't have to use the dock, and if
No,
it's a
I
condition.
understand that. Yeah, no, I
and
understand that.
it's a problem, then they don't have to use the dock. That's only trying to be nice, not a condition that I want to, like I'm selling things so that people can use the dock and I'm gonna charge them. That's not the case. It was only
Right.
trying to be nice to the neighbors. And again, if that's a reason for not having it, then don't let them use the dock. It's not my choice not to let them use it, it would be the commission's. And I kinda get it. It's, a guy owns a piece of property and there's 1 dock there. He don't need 2. But it's really not that. It's not what it's all about. And I wish I could at least talk to the man about it, but I guess that's not gonna be the case.
Okay.
So,
thank you. Board, anything else? You ready to close the hearing? Is there any, because of this, if you think we have more information coming, without Mr. Buckminster, there's no one really to question,
No,
so.
whatever. I move to
I
close
have
the
a,
hearing.
okay, thank you. I have a motion to close the hearing.
Second.
I have a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained. The hearing is closed. What is your wish?
Motion to,
So is,
go ahead.
no, I'm sorry, I think that's discussion. Are we saying that we want it perpendicular or leave it the same way?
We've closed the hearing.
That's what I thought.
Can I chime in, or I don't know what the
Go ahead,
protocol
go
is here?
for it.
Well, if somebody wishes to make a motion, that's the next step.
The motion is that that we support.
I think our hands are tied, and it's a motion to deny.
So I have a motion to deny. I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Opposed.
Abstained? 4-2-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a next one up is for 12 over Jordan Road. Is there a new plan?
Yes.
No, we're sharing. Septic system. Hey. Bichette will read to the project.
Did you get Brian?
Oh, yes, please. Brian, identify yourself for the record.
Brian Grady, GAF Engineering.
Thank you.
The project site is 12 over Jordan Road, and the project involves the demolition of an existing dwelling and the reconstruction of a new dwelling and septic system in the buffer zone to a coastal bank and within a coastal flood zone. The existing home and garage are to be removed, and a new 28 by 44-foot dwelling with associated nitrogen-reducing septic is proposed. This dwelling would be elevated on pilings because it is in a VE elevation 18 flood zone. At the last meeting, we continued the hearing because we did not have a DEP file number, and there was a request to shift the dwelling footprint slightly to get further from the coastal bank, which has been done and is shown on the revised plan you have in front of you. Hay bales and silt fence are proposed between the work and the resource area. There are also the remnants of an old cottage that's in the wetlands that's also proposed to be removed from the site. So with the revised plan, I would recommend the approval of the project with the standard conditions and the added conditions about making sure all the debris from this old cottage is removed and that no heavy machinery drive down into the wetland to get it out.
Any comments, please?
No, nothing to add.
Nothing from me.
No?
I just had one question. Do you know how old these structures are?
Two of them were 74 years old.
Oh, so it barely makes the criteria for demolition request from Historic Commission, right?
Right.
They're 75.
One of them was over 75, two of them were, the others were under 75.
They're in pretty much disrepair.
Oh, yes, they are.
I wouldn't even, if I was on the historic, I wouldn't even entertain trying to save them.
So, no heavy machinery on the marsh to remove that old structure in the back? Is that any other conditions? Low nitrogen. I'm really serious about this lawn. It's not to be a,
Well, that's our standard.
I know it's standard, but I always like to repeat it. Watch your nitrogen. Okay. Anybody in the audience would like to speak for or against this project? I'm seeing none.
Let's close the hearing.
I have a motion, and I have a second to close the hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, the hearing is closed.
Motion to grant with the agent's comments.
No heavy machinery.
That'll cover everything.
Okay, I have a motion, and I heard a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. Okey dokey. This is number 12 that's done. Next one is 14 over Jordan Road. Okay. Okay. Please identify yourself for the record.
Brian Grady with GAF Engineering.
Is there a new plan, or is this? Is there a new plan?
Hold on a second here. Well, I think we had a new plan last time,
Yeah,
but there's no new plan beyond that.
okay.
Unbelievable.
So this was not new?
The last one we have was revised on February 17th. I think that's the last one we had.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, so it's the same plan as last meeting. Mr. Pichette will read to the project.
This site is 14 over Jordan Road and also involves the demolition of an existing dwelling and the reconstruction of a new dwelling and septic system in the buffer zone to a coastal bank and within the flood zone. Again, the new dwelling would be on pilings and would be approximately 24 by 28 feet in size. It's proposed to raise the grade by 2 to 3 feet in the vicinity of the dwelling and septic system. At the last meeting, again, we did not have the DEP file number, which we now have. So I would recommend the approval of the project based on the revised plan of February 17th.
We did talk about dewatering.
Yes, for all of these, that's going to be one of the
A standard,
conditions.
okay.
Yeah.
Brian, anything to add?
Nothing to add other than I don't anticipate dewatering on any of these. My test pits indicated groundwater 5 feet, 6 feet, so I don't anticipate dewatering being necessary.
Great. Anybody in the audience would like to speak for or against this particular project?
Motion to close?
I have a motion to close the hearing.
Second.
I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained?
Motion to grant?
Second.
I have a motion to grant and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained? Okay, that's 2 down. Again, don't do anything until you see Mr. Pichette on these, okay? It's 14. The next one is 16 over Jordan Road. New plan?
Nope, same plan.
Okay. Sorry. That's an old one, so I have one that's dated,
Thank you.
218.
218 is the one. Want to see it? Okay. Bichette will read to the project.
This house is 16 over Jordan Road, the third one down the road on the left, and again involves the demolition of an existing dwelling and reconstruction of a new dwelling and septic system in the buffer zone to the coastal bank and within the coastal flood zone. The new dwelling would be 26 by 30 feet in size, and would be approximately 42 feet from the top of the coastal bank and within flood zone VE elevation 18. And again, the dwelling would be on raised concrete pilings. Again, at the last meeting, we did not have a DEP number, which we now have. And so I would recommend the approval of the project with the standard conditions for this project as well, with conditions for dewatering, just in case they're needed.
Thank you. Brian, anything to add?
Nothing to add.
Questions from the board?
Same
Nope.
question.
No.
Are these all the same vintage, all these houses?
Not all of them. They're 74, 79.
They're all in disrepair.
Yeah, the permit applications have been filed online, and Historic will comment on them.
Okay. Thanks.
Is there anybody speak to or for this project?
Motion to close?
I have a motion. I have a second. The hearing is closed. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. Now the hearing is closed.
Further motion? Yeah.
Yeah.
Motion to grant.
Second.
I have a motion to grant. Harriet is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. Done. Next one is 9 over Jordan Road. Boy, am I going to take all that paperwork out of my folder. Yay. It was getting heavy.
You need more filing cabinets? I probably got one or two spare ones. Which we're gonna have to build a garage bigger one.
I don't think so. I don't,
Nah, I don't need it. I'm not through all of this.
okay. Okay, Mr. Bichette, your turn.
This location is 9 over Jordan Road, and this project involves the construction of a single-family dwelling, the removal of another structure on the site, and the modification of a second existing dwelling that is in the buffer zone to the coastal bank and within the coastal flood zone. A 40 by 55-foot dwelling with associated septic system is proposed within flood zone VE elevation 17. And again, the new dwelling would be on concrete pilings due to the velocity flood zone. The existing dwelling on the site to be removed is approximately 50 feet from the top of the coastal bank, which is a seawall. Another existing dwelling would be reutilized as an open pavilion with changing room and bathroom. And there are septic systems proposed to handle both of these buildings. Hay bales and silt fence are proposed between the work and the resource areas. We had continued the hearing because we did not have a DEP file number, which we now have. So I would recommend the approval of the project based on the revised plan that we have.
And definitely dewatering around the new pool.
Yes.
Yeah, so, but
There
standard
was,
dewatering
there was
is on
also, just a quick question, for the utilities for this, those are gonna be elevated, correct? Or has that not been determined yet?
Well, we're proposing underground, but we will confirm all that through the permitting process.
Okay.
Any questions on the board?
I have a question.
Yes.
How high are they above? How tall are the pilings that they sit on, the house sits on?
Well, existing grade and the location of the house is about 7,
So 10 feet?
and the top of the pile will be 20. So 13 feet above existing grade, but we're bringing in a couple of feet of fill below, so it'll be about 11 feet
10,
from
11.
the fill grade to the bottom of the new foundation.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Anybody in the audience would like to speak for or against this project? Seeing none,
Motion to close?
I have a motion and a second to close the hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstain?
Motion to grant?
Second?
I have a motion to grant. I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained? Good. Next one is 17. I don't know how you keep them all straight. 17.
Lots of
huh?
folders.
Lots of folders, 17. Please state your name for the record, Brian.
Brian Grady, GAF Engineering.
Thank you. Mr. Burchett will read the project. Do you want a plan? You want a plan?
So this site is 17 over Jordan Road, and this project involves the construction of a single-family dwelling and removing an existing in-ground pool. And this is within the buffer zone to a coastal bank and within coastal flood zone. A 45 by 50-foot dwelling with associated septic system is proposed, and this is in flood zone VE elevation 17. Again, the new dwelling would be elevated on concrete pilings. It's proposed to raise the grade by 3 to 4 feet in the vicinity of the dwelling and septic system. The existing in-ground pool is approximately 8 feet from the top of the coastal bank, again, which is the seawall. The pool materials in the surrounding patio would be removed and the site backfilled with clean sand. Again, at the last meeting, we did not have the DEP number, which we do now have, so I would recommend the issuance of the order of conditions with the standard conditions, and that clean material be used to backfill the existing in-ground pool.
Thank you. Anything to add?
Nothing to add.
Any question on the board?
No.
Anybody in the audience for or against this project? I'm seeing none.
Motion closed.
I have a motion to close the hearing. I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. The hearing is closed.
Motion to grant with the stipulation of clean material, fill material.
I have a motion. I heard a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. Done.
Thank you very much. Am I done?
You're done. Okay, next on the line. We have extension request from Kenneth Nelligan.
You want to do these people that are still
Oh.
here?
Why are,
So we have this
Okay.
one, I'll tell you.
which one do we have? Mark's Auto? Okay, anybody here from Mark's Auto, come on down and speak and let us know.
How you doing?
Hi,
I'm David Wedge from Mark's Auto Service.
thank you, David. Mr. Bichette will read the violations he found.
Okay, this project site is Mark's Auto at 2688 Cranberry Highway. And there was some issues there with vehicles and whatnot being stored too close to the edge of the stream, which runs along the side of this business. And so an enforcement order was issued so that we could meet with the owners to discuss the matter, to get these things pulled back, and that there would be sort of an established zone where they could put materials and vehicles and where they should keep them away from. I met with Mr. Wedge there today. We toured the site. He showed me around, and we discussed where things should be, located and not located, and that there was going to be a fence established to make sure the limits were clear. He's agreed to do those things that we've asked and work with the commission to get the things squared away. So he's just here to comment in case anybody has any further questions, but we kind of did do a good tour today, and I think we're going to be on the right track to get things established the way they need to be there.
I would agree with that.
Anything to add?
No, like, it went exactly like you said. It was a good time. It was good to establish. I'm new, I'm working for Mark, and he's kind of expanding a little bit, and I took over that location. And basically, I hate to use ignorance as an excuse, but I just didn't know what the limitations were.
Space was premium, and you just kept backing it up and backing them up until, whoops.
And then, now that I know where it is, and we were putting up a fence, we were already in the process of doing it. And with him coming and me being able to have a real good idea of where it needs to be, I can't see how there's going to be a problem in the future, because there's going to be a fence there from stopping anything going that direction.
Okay, thank you. Questions on the board?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, so I would just say, just to vote to ratify the enforcement, and then, as I said, Mr. Wedge and myself will make sure things get squared away, and we can take this up down the road once things have been rectified.
All right. I need a motion to ratify the enforcement orders.
So moved.
I have that motion.
Second.
I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained? We'll sign the documents, and you can start working on your fence.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right,
Guys, have a
thanks
great night.
for coming out.
Appreciate your time.
Yep.
We were lucky those tires didn't get us next. Since you're
Certificate of
the
compliance.
only one here, would you like to come forward? Because then we'll get Michael next. Which one are we?
Makepeace certificate of compliance.
Okay. And identify yourself for the record.
Good evening. I'm Dan Gagney with Beals and Thomas.
I know, I'm so used to Stacy.
Heat in this place?
This project was for the construction of Cranberry Bog on Makepeace property that was done, quite a few years ago now. They just never came back to get the certificate of compliance. Everything has been completed in terms of the order of conditions, and again, it was basically creating some new cranberry bog at the site. So I would recommend the issuance of the certificate of compliance.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstain? Tim, you got it.
All right,
We'll
thank you.
just sign it, and
All right, have a nice evening.
Yep, you too.
not bad, 8:15. Okay. We have some old business. We have the extension request.
Yes, we have two extension requests.
One more certificate of compliance, is there?
I think that's on hold. I don't think Dave finished.
Yeah, I didn't
it.
quite get to do the inspection on that one, so I'd like to just push that off to the next meeting. The first extension request is for Ken Nelligan, and this is at 156 Cremisa Road. They had an order of conditions to do work on the foundation of their house to establish a concrete slab under the house. They haven't quite been able to get to that, and they're requesting a one-year extension, which I would recommend
So
granting.
moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained? We are extending 1 year. Jennifer and Ellis Bailey at 31 Crab Cove Terrace.
This project involved a construction of a retaining wall and the construction of a deck at the site. The retaining wall has been completed, but they didn't get to finish the deck, and so they're asking for a one-year extension to complete that.
So moved.
I have a motion. I have a second. All in favor? Opposed, abstained? Okay, Ellis, you got your extension. Signatures. Okay, Michael. We have received an application from Michael Mercier to be a member of the Conservation Commission. It would be an associate position. I believe I sent this out to everybody when we received it a couple weeks ago. Any questions on the board?
Motion, we accept his application.
I have a motion to accept his application. I have a second. All in favor? I opposed, abstained. Mr. Bichette, will you please send a letter of our recommendation that we appoint Michael Mercier to the Conservation Commission as an associate member?
Yes, indeed.
Okay, so, thank you very much.
Thank you,
Anything
guys.
you want to add?
As I said, thank you, guys. I appreciate it. And I look forward to joining you
Fray.
guys up there.
Joining the fray.
So,
I was surprised. I walked down a few weeks ago down Over Jordan Road when I had a week off from work, and I was actually I actually joined you. I was surprised some of those houses were that old when I found out tonight. 75 years old or older, and I kind of with you.
No work done
There's
on
no
those
need-
houses in a long time.
Just get rid of them at this point.
I had to ask that question because my wife's on the historic.
I knew that's why.
That would make sense.
Sandy, I have a question.
yes,
And silt fences as opposed to hay bales, are they more expensive? Will they stop the water, the,
silk fence themselves is really just, it really isn't standalone. You really do need the two of them together. Hay bales can stand by themselves. Silk fences cannot because they fall down so quickly.
Yeah, unless it's a really flat site with a, like, say, a really minor project, like somebody's just digging sonotubes and you're not gonna have a lot of material, then that might be appropriate, but, for any significant project, we typically want silt fence and hay bales. And the other problem with silt fence is, from when I see it, probably 80% of the time, it's not put in correctly.
And they
They just
fall
bang
over.
the stakes in, they don't embed the bottom into the ground, so you
Yeah,
just
so
have
it
this
goes
flap
underneath.
and it does nothing. It's just there for looks, basically.
the only reason I asked is that, another conservation commissioner in another town was saying that they and many towns will not use hay bales anymore.
Yeah, some towns don't want that because they feel there's weed seeds and sometimes invasive seeds that potentially
Exactly.
could be in there. But you could also, a lot of people are using straw bales instead of hay bales, which really there's not much seed in the
It's
straw.
more expensive.
Yeah, so, we just have found that, A, we haven't really seen a problem with invasive species from the bales, from projects that we've done, and B, they just have a much better holding power when you have a significant project. They're just thicker and taller, and dirt doesn't tend to overtop them as easily as some of the other stuff. So,
Plus, what's wrong with a little Timothy and alfalfa, Just helps the rabbits.
The wattles don't work that good either.
Yeah, the straw wattles, again, they're only about this big unless you get the true compost-filled tubes. Then they're probably that fat and they're solid. Whereas the straw wattles are, you leave them out there for a couple of weeks and they just squash down to about that height. And the way they come, there's only a stake like one every 8 to 10 feet. So, again,
A little bit of pressure and
you
they,
just, they
Yeah.
just go away. So I just don't like it. Of course, the contractors like it because it's cheap, it's easy to put in because there's only one stake every 8, 10 feet. But, again, on some sites it might be okay, but usually it's just easier to say, put hay bales in. That's harder to screw up and, provides better holding power.
Now, Rob, you'll be leaving us shortly?
probably by June,
June, okay.
Leaving
yeah,
on vacation, right?
No.
sort of.
Permanent
Yeah,
vacation.
yeah, one long one.
You getting off?
Yeah, I'm leaving the
No,
country.
that's not allowed.
Leaving the country.
You can't do it, sorry.
And,
Well, stop me at the border.
I have an opportunity to go west for an airfare of 130 round trip, and I'm taking it, so I will
Good for
I
you.
will miss the next meeting.
Oh, I don't know if I can handle it.
So
Yeah,
I'd
no
like,
problem.
anything else? If not,
You sure the airplanes are still gonna be
I'm
flying?
around.
Move
I'm
to
not going
close
to work for a
meeting.
couple more weeks.
okay, I need a motion to say
Motion to
goodnight.
close the
Motion to
meeting.
close, a motion to adjourn.
Adjourn.
Second.
I have a motion to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Abstain? Yeah,
Hey,
we're adjourned.
On the bright side, you know, you can come down and